From this day, Andor marches toward pain and division. The shadow has yet to darken to its blackest, and I cannot see if the light will come after.
And welcome back to the Reign of Books podcast, the reader's entry into great narratives, where the written page reigns supreme all the time, always. I'm John Keel, joining you from the War Room. My co-host is Josh Preston, joining you from the Hyrule Cube. Josh, we are on episode number 17. 17. I didn't realize that myself. But today's show is brought to you by Chapter 40. Rand is handsome.
Handsome
That
Rand.
is all.
John, hey, how's it going?
Great.
Awesome. This is the 3 of 4 parts of Wheel of Time, The Eye of the World series by Robert Jordan, and it is getting infinitely awesome. Before we actually get to the book, where we have a lot going on, the entire group is still fragmented. The world is not a fun place to be in right now. We actually have a name to their kingdom. It's called Andor. Andor. Yeah, it's called Andor. The realm of Andor. So, it's kind of like we know there's a big kingdom, bunch of kingdoms, and they're going to fight the Dark One. So your big epic journey will continue right after the news. And first up in the news, Tor the famous, I should say notable publishing book company for sci-fi and fantasy, Tor.com is coming up with its own imprint. So what does that do? It's a author-centric imprint that will give more attention to novellas and short fiction. So if you enjoy sci-fi and fantasy and are a writer, this might be a new publishing route for you. The Tor.com imprint will allow authors to cater to ebook and mobile readers by releasing short form that promises awareness of the author's books on the digital bookshelf, which is increasingly how people read their books. Release windows for ebook novellas are more flexible, and the length of the story strengthens the options that authors, both new and experienced, have in getting their fiction to market. So, John, we talk about, on the Reign of Books podcast, we want to find out the best sci-fi and fantasy. There's a world of authors who can't go their traditional route, so this is just another avenue for them to go, but it's from Tor.com, and you can't get any better than that because Tor is synonymous with helping upstarts, first-time writers, discovering, the class, some fiction that becomes down the road classic. So it's really for, everybody, and that's a good thing. Anybody who wants to jump into the publishing market.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, because Tor, when I think of Tor, they're a huge publisher of fantasy. I don't know how much sci-fi they do, but they're a big name in that whole genre, and so that ought to be the kind of thing we're promoting on this show. But no, that's great to hear. That is something that if you're interested in writing, you should check out. Go with them. Yeah, check them out, especially if you like the genre we're covering here.
I do believe Ender's Game is published by Tor. I could be totally wrong, but Ender's Game is my favorite sci-fi book of all time. So I'm going to give Tor credit if I can find it here. I'm not sure, but anyway, go to the next news, and I'll find out.
The next story is basically about Amazon fighting with the publishing giant Hachette. I keep wanting to call it Hachette because I've seen the Machete movies, and so I'll just call it Hachette just to be funny. Yeah, so anyway, they're in this big fight with them, and frankly, I don't care how much of a giant Hachette is. You probably don't want to go to battle with Amazon. And I think Amazon can win in the PR realm as well, convincing the public about who's right and who's wrong. But the story comes to you from The Verge, one of my favorite sites about tech news. Basically, Amazon's upset about how much Hachette's trying to charge for ebooks, and so Amazon is burying their content. I mean, they're going to still sell books that are published by Hachette, but they're not promoting them as top-tier books. They might promote them in third-party vendors if you can't find what you want from elsewhere. And there's nothing illegal from what the article is saying about doing that. A lot of bookstores will do that, and book companies will do that. They'll promote their friends. So you still have the option of buying from them, it sounded like, but they're not being too friendly with Hatchet. I read some of the comments below the article, and it was interesting. A lot of people were upset about. I thought Amazon was supposed to be a friend of the reader. Well, you could go either way with that. Are they not a friend of the reader for only trying to promote books that are at decently priced, especially for an ebook? And then I read other comments that said, hey, I'm not going to pay more for an ebook that's cheaper to make than an actual physical book, which currently are cheaper than ebooks right now. So I'm not sure what side of the argument you fall on, but there you go. Big publishing battle.
So Amazon and Hatchet cannot bury the hatchet. Wah wah wah. this is kind of I don't know what commentary we can add here except the fact that a while back we were rooting for Amazon because Apple was in collusion with all the publishers to try to increase or try to come up with a backroom deal so they could compete with Amazon in ebooks, and that would essentially increase the price of ebooks. That was a huge story over the course of the year, or a year-plus period, and then DOJ, actually the Department of Justice, came in and said, yeah, Apple, you played unfairly, so it's an antitrust lawsuit or some other legal maneuvering that benefited Amazon. Now we see Amazon. Is it a schoolyard bully, what they're doing? But they did make the good analogy of being a bookstore and having preference of what they want to promote. And like you said, they have the sway of public opinion in their favor because they do ebooks cheap. They have the superior reading experience. We actually are able to do this podcast because Amazon has tools that I can use seamlessly to figure out what I want to talk about highlight-wise from their there's a web platform where I can have all my highlights consolidated and other little perks with their actual devices. So long story short, I'm not being an Amazon fanboy, but I'm taking a look at it, again, like you said, from the reader standpoint. And I love all the tools that allow me just to actually come and comment on my book. They have good reads where you can actually talk with other book lovers about their books. So they have this ecosystem that's growing, and I just want books to be cheap. So that's the only thing. They've done such a good job of pulling me in. If they raise the prices eventually, that's just the nature of the game. But they know, they're a low margin company. Books might become their high margin commodity if they actually do raise prices. And who knows? The fight can only benefit us, John, if they keep fighting. Honestly, competition is good, I should say, not the fight, but the competition. If the publishers and Amazon keep trying to go at it, and people can still compete with Amazon, good for us. So, end of soapbox speech, and going to the last news story. This is where Blurb, which is predominantly known as a photo book company, in my opinion, it's an independent e-publishing platform. They acquired Graphically. It's essentially an acqui-hire, hiring the actual talent from Graphically, which was a comic book-focused independent publisher as well. So they are combining, and this basically might mean that Graphically will stop publishing comic books, which might be a sad thing if that's the case because they're being absorbed by Blurb. But the sale comes at a time of consolidation for other independent publishing and distribution platforms. In April, Amazon acquired digital comic and graphic novel distributor Comixology, which, unlike Blurb, worked a lot with a lot of large print publishers. A month before that, Dropbox acquired Readmill. So there's a lot of consolidation going on in the industry, and Blurb, which I'm a fan of, hopefully will improve because of these 6 employees coming from Graphically. I've been a fan of theirs. They have really good prices, again, going back to what's good for the user. Good prices for independent publishers. It actually leads me down the road. Just the story makes me think on my to-do list, write a short story with the kids, have them illustrate it, and publish it, just as a creative outlet. So this is good, again, for people who are not necessarily writers like myself, but who have other small little side projects, like kids' books with their kids.
Yeah, this is I actually have a lot of comments on this story, but I'll keep it brief. But I think something like Comixology, that was built because those people really, really love comics, and not that people don't love the work they do, but it seems like the thing to do now is to build a service that may do something similar to another service, but have a better twist on it, and then hope that bigger service acquires you eventually. I'm not really sure where I'm going with that. That just seems like the thing now. I'm not sure how long that form of business can survive, right? Because eventually the other company's got to run out of money to keep acquiring all these. You know what I mean? And what does a little guy do when he finally he starts being a little competitive and really he just wants to sell his company?
I guess some people do want to get bought out, and you know what? This company graphically did have some startup venture, so they got the notice of some venture capitalists, and you know, they had a good operation going. So hey, it might be good to find out how to do that if you're a startup business owner. So that concludes the news, and we're jumping into Wheel of Time, The Eye of the World, Book 1, Part 3. So John, I am super excited because we have to jump right in. We spent a large portion of the last part of the story where Robert Jordan actually kept things with Perrin and Egwene. They were saved in the wilderness, and things were looking good, then things looked really bad. I said things would get worse before they got better, and I had absolutely no idea how bad they would get and how true, you know, how clairvoyant I was. I totally predicted this, John. But we jump away from everyone who we know is, no, they're not safe anymore. I was about to say everybody's safe, but no, they keep on jumping. What's the cliche out of
The frying pan into the fire.
Thank you, classic cliche.
And we covered Matt and Rand for 5 chapters straight, and I was a little surprised at that because it just goes to show this isn't a formula story, right? Because a formula story, every other chapter, so you're bouncing to another group. But 5 chapters straight. I thought we were just going to stick with Rand and Matt the whole time until we got to this chunk of the book.
Yeah, it was a really good transition, or a big opening in the story that showed, for me, how desperate things were for Matt and Rand. This is not even an apples for apples analogy, but anyone who's familiar with the Road, which is a book by Cormac McCarthy, it's the post-apocalyptic book about the end of the world, father and son surviving. It's literally the most depressing book you could read because it's like the apocalypse is just a dog-eat-dog world with nothing that survived. So this is not an analogy, but I had to put it out there because they are so desperate. They're being hunted by the ultimate evil in the world. There are strangers that are going to Camelon. They're on the road to Camelon. I call it the road to depression because Matt is going further and further away. I still think my theory about this dagger has some enchantment over him, and he's actually spiraling out of control, but he's doing it internally. He keeps repeating, which is the depressing part. If you think with the way Robert Jordan puts you in their shoes is the fact he keeps repeating that they're dead, Rand. Rand keeps alive the hope that everyone's alive and they'll meet him in Camelon, but Matt repeatedly says they're dead, and he literally just sits there and is falling apart internally. He's imploding, and Rand is like, I can't do this by myself. He's worried. He's really on the edge of a cliff, and at this precipice, he feels like he's going to fall off, and he has to keep it together for them. So the road to depression is filled with the fact that all these other travelers are going to Camelon. In each town, it's harder and harder to find work. They talk about finding a place to sleep, living in the elements, farmers who they would work for. But as they get closer to Camelon, people are tired of the travelers. There's more and more strangers, and even though these towns look familiar, they're homesick. Rand and Matt are like, these places are not so different from the far west, for where we're from. But farmers eventually don't give them work. Some farmers run them off.
Yeah,
Some farmers actually cheat them. They cheat
got
them.
treed several times. The dog chasing them, they got treed. And it took hours for the dog. I laughed when I read it. I mean, that was. I'm glad Robert Jordan added it in because it did make it feel more real. But I was just laughing, picturing Rand and Matt hanging out in the tree with Matt going, "They're all dead, Rand," because Matt is just. I just can't stand this character, and I know he's going to be important later on. So then I'm going to go, and I'm just going to hate him even more. But yeah, I don't know if it's the. I mean, it could be the dagger. But his personality being just that little kid all the time is constantly into trouble. I could easily see him throwing a temper tantrum like this as well. So he is a drag on this whole part of the book.
And I have a theory where that's going, and I'll get to that in a second. Probably where we see him at his darkest. But I will say that the last thing about their traveling is that they have no security, because even if they do find work, they're sometimes cheated, and they're run off after they do the work. And the fact that they're treed by the dogs, like you said, it's cool, because Robert Jordan, just in just very small sentences, I love how he again puts you in their shoes with just one or two descriptions. Rand said what he regretted most when they're up there in the tree wasting hours until the dogs go away is the fact that they're losing time. He doesn't want to sit there on farms during the day and work. He wants to travel because the fade could be catching up. So it's really real. It's not just this narrative that you're describing. Oh, woe are they. It's like you feel all of his decisions. He's making trade-offs, and you're like, wow, this again is a really desperate situation. That's why I did feel like it was appropriate to say it might be the end of the world for them. They'll never see their home again. Rand is fretting over the hours they're losing, and they're desperate. They're just completely desperate, and Matt's no help, like you said. So things get worse as they get closer to Camelot. How can things get worse? They got their cloaks on their back. They're at least having some haystacks to sleep in. But then they get to the Four Kings. Is that the name of the town? One of the last towns, the Four Kings?
Yeah, the name of the town. Yeah, it was Four Kings. Hey, before we jump into that, did you feel like the Dark One was better at tracking things, even though he was trapped in Shell Ghoul, than everyone else was? It seemed like that guy could keep pace with them, no problem, and everyone else who was tracking them could not find them for anything. But the Dark One, who's not even there, he's trapped. He is employing all of his assets and easily keeping pace with them.
I think that's where the suspension of disbelief has to come in. For me, it was like, wait a minute, Moraine has some kind of powers that come into play that are helpful within certain distances, but the whole suspension of disbelief and understanding how this guy's powers work, maybe people are going to nitpick it more and say there's got to be continuity there about how he tracks them as far as proximity, or if the fades give him more direct channel or the dreams give him more direct channel. I thought that the dreams and I don't know. I guess the fact that maybe he has that connection with the Dragon Reborn. Maybe
he does. I just thought he was better. He was just way more efficient at tracking what he wanted, even though he was trapped in this distant land, or area of the land. It was just kind of. I said, oh wow, this stinks. This stinks for Rand and Matt because no one else can keep pace with him.
Well, there's a little bit of foreshadowing, not exactly on the line of thought you're thinking, but it's the foreshadowing of how many dark friends there are in the world. And so we know that the viewpoint of this whole world comes from this group of 8. And we know that there's large kingdoms with politics and huge armies and people that are protecting Andor and the other nations, and even forces of good that are at divisive over how to go about defeating the Dark One. So there's a bunch of dark friends out there. There's a whole group of cultists and these weirdos who follow the Dark One. So I found that interesting because it's not Trollocs, it's not evil people, it's actually people. It's like Satanists. But so basically we meet, we go to the Four Kings, because this is actually where this becomes pivotal to the story, without actually just saying what happens to him. But it's a horrible town, and Matt and Rand get even in worse trouble. I mean, they go to a tavern where they need to eat and sleep. They've gotten used to the good thing, and I actually said it. I should have said it got better before it got worse. They actually started using their gleeman skills, and I have to snicker when I say that. But Tom Maryland gave them some basic training, so they're playing at inns, and they actually get accustomed and they get to sleeping in inns, so that's good.
But Josh, it occurred to me in this section of the book that them using the gleeman skills, that was the second let me show you how to use that sword boy moment in the book, but these were real practical skills that Tom Maryland taught them, so a little bit of a different take on that whole concept, but they were actually using these to survive.
Yeah, they basically, you're right. It was easier to absorb that. Hey, yeah, he has musical talent where he can juggle, not as hard as fighting with a sword. And they got accustomed to the good life after a point. So it was like, okay, good. These guys get a break, but then immediately at the Four Kings, this is a merchant's town, unlike any other villages, the farmers' towns, and it's a bunch of roughnecks. And they go to this one inn and they find out that this guy wants to swindle them. And so all night, I love the description Robert Jordan gives here, because it's this loud, rancorous place that just is assaulting their senses, and they're worried about these two bouncers that are about to rob them. And then it gets worse. There's this really creepy guy that puts them on edge, that sits down and just stares at them. And so they're trapped in this end. And at the end of the night, they find out that this is a merchant from Whitebridge that's following them. So it's like, who is this guy? Because he has a rich wagon out front. But at the end of the night, they're not immediately pummeled and all their goods are stolen. They're promised their room in the back. And this was an interesting part of the book for me, because they literally have no way out. They got put in the back room, and they're trying to calculate when they're going to get robbed, and the whole thing is back to the whole desperation mode, just a survival mode, and they can't get out of the back room with the bars. The windows are even barred. And then comes the knock on the door, and it's this creepy guy. I'll just call him creepy guy, because he doesn't last very long. We think, I kind of gave it away there, but the desperation mode, there's a real sense of danger, and he does work for the Dark One. He is a dark friend, and he literally starts talking about, you're already halfway to him. You're marked. Come to him. It'll be easier. Otherwise, it'll be painful. So Matt flips out, of course. I mean, I'll sit here and get on the Matt bashing train. He's no help. And Rand is literally like, what do we do? Matt actually says, well, if we don't have a choice. I don't know why Matt said that. If we don't have a choice, maybe they can escape later. I think that was his thinking.
Yeah, he just wanted to give in. They had done a job buying time by wedging that door the way that Rand did. But yeah, Matt was just ready to throw in the towel. I guess he didn't want to try to fight them.
And you know what? That made me suspect that maybe he was succumbing to something, and we'll figure that out. I won't tell you my theory just yet. But all of a sudden, and this is where I was like, oh, this is awesome. All of a sudden, there's this huge flash of blinding light. So we know what that was. It was Rand channeling the One Power. Or, I'm going to get it mixed up. The True Source, One Power, True Source.
Yeah, it was, it's the One Power.
The One Power.
Channeled it in his panic. I mean, the book didn't say it right out, but you knew because of how ill he fell afterwards. But I'm getting ahead of myself. He channels that One Power, and Matt apparently sees the whole thing happen because he about goes blind. But yeah, when they get up off the floor, they realize a massive lightning bolt had come straight through the window and blown the door to pieces and fried this dark friend and everyone else who was with him. And
that was a pretty surreal moment.
That was pretty cool.
Wow, it's downpouring outside. So Rand don't know if he knew what he did, and Matt was blinded, and they escaped through this giant, just cavernous opening, the wall that's blown away, and they go into the night, and that's how they get away. So it's kind of just an interesting confrontation. It is what it is, but Rand channels the One Power, so that's important. It's just the evolution of his powers. But the next chapter,
which must have been a beacon to the Dark One, right? If he didn't know exactly where they were before, he certainly did then. And I was a little surprised the Aes Sedai didn't pick up on this a little bit. It seemed to me like Moraine would have said, I just, sensed something. But well, not necessarily, because I'm crossing a lot of different stories into each other, right? I mean, no, she wouldn't have to. I just would have expected that to be the next natural thing that would have come in the book. But,
yeah, no, I'll sit here and take it completely back. Forget I said that, because they go out in the world and search for potential Aes Sedai, women who show the powers. So, it's kind of like NynaEve. She showed powers as a child. They can't sense when people are using the One Power. So
he channeled so much power because he fell so ill after this, right? Which we knew from the previous part of the story that people that channel it do fall ill, right? We learned that from NynaEve. But that was an immense amount of power, and he fell extreme. I think he probably almost died, and Robert Jordan just didn't say that in the book during that fever that he had. That was an incredible amount of energy. He literally channeled energy, through himself almost.
You're making a connection that I completely missed. Woo! Way over the head when he fell ill. Oh my goodness, I forget. I didn't make the connection. I thought it was just them fatigue and being on the road. So you're right. So
Could have been, but I think it had more to do with the channeling
good
of the power.
job. No, well done, sir. The next book actually brings us in. We talk about this 5-chapter arc or this concentration on these two characters because it goes to show you in this world there are dark friends that are starting to climb out of the the woodworks because they encounter in the next town or whatever, however many number of villages they get to before Camelin. There's this one kid that approaches them, and he's basically heard about what happened in that town, so word has spread from what happened there. And I thought Rain and Matt were super paranoid because this kid looked like he was going to help them, but they literally put him through the ringer and threatened him. And this kid was pretty shaken. They won't let him even talk, so that's why I was like, these guys are like seriously in a bad place. I mean, again, I can understand it. That just it was reiterated how incredibly distrustful they were and how incredibly paranoid. Anything that would put them out, as noticeable, they couldn't be noticed. But this kid turned out to be a dark friend. It was a really quick kind of confrontation. So it was a little like weird in the fact that there was just this random kid. He said, "I'm alone. I got something to tell you." And then he started shouting, and then once they rebuffed him like 5 times, he's like, "I have friends. The Dark One will come and get you. There's no running." And then I was like, "Holy cow!" So I was wrong. Their instincts were right, and this kid went running out of there, flipping out. And they keep going, and they want to travel even during the night. They just need to get as far away from the Four Kings as possible. And the next town, they actually find when Rand does get really sick, and Matt, kudos to Matt, he actually leverages.
Yeah, he actually did something right, and I was surprised. And I threw the book down, and I threw my hands up, and I said, "Wow!" And then he let me down later on. So, but I did have a wow moment.
You tell me about that letdown later on, because Matt just kind of just goes downhill from here. But this is his last hurrah. He threatens the innkeeper and says, "Give us a back room, or I'll sit here and tell everybody that Rand's sick, and we'll walk right out to the commons room." So, Matt, maybe in his moment of desperation, has his genius stroke. So they actually give both the boys the barn in the back, and Rand, Matt looks after him, and he's Rand's going in and out of a fever. I don't know if he has one of his fever dreams.
But that particular fever dream, and before he sees Baalzamon there, he isn't this the fever dream where he basically went through all of the major characters in the book, and each of them was kind of looking down on him and either scorning him or acting disappointed in him. I think that was when he had this fever dream. But that was an interesting dream to me because it seemed like, we talked about the boys coming into their own, and he was going to have to move past all this worry that his father was going to be disappointed in him, or you know what I mean. He had that dream. It was almost like he had to have that dream because he had to get past all those things about people not liking him, or he doesn't know where he's from. He's got to get past it. He's got to move on. He's already channeling that one power now, and then I thought I also liked the dream sequences, even the ones with Baalzamon, because it seemed like Robert Jordan was able to get across some higher level concepts when he was in the dreams, right? It wasn't just the narrative of the story. This is where you kind of really get the lay of the land, is in these dreams. And I mean, Baalzamon was talking about, he kept going on about the eye of the world will never serve you. And we still don't really know what the eye of the world is exactly, but we're getting little bits and pieces about it through the dreams. So I really like these dream sequences.
No, they're essential to Rand and his connection to the weaving of the web, and we'll get to that's just a way of saying in the pattern of the world. There are certain, I guess, what do you call it, hurricane or tornado type concentrations of threads that come together, and the world is bound in this one course. A lot of things get trapped in this web within the pattern, and Rand is the center point. And at the end of this section of the book, which we went out with a bang, we're going to talk about that. That was incredible what happens at the end of this section with knowing how important Rand is. So this fever dream, you're right, he has it. He's kind of like, where am I? What am I doing? You know what? It's no way out for him, and he's in Matt's hands at this point. And then this woman comes in, and she's one of these self-possessed, important women. That's one of Robert Jordan's favorite character types, is really strong female leads. And you think she's the healer that came to help him, but word has spread that he's sick, he's back there. There is a healer in town, and it's very very interesting. She leans over him and she says, "You're as weak as a kitten." And she could tell that, and then she immediately looks up at Matt and pulls out a pointy, shiny metal object. And Matt
went, "Ooh, what's that?" Shiny. Okay.
He escaped death because this woman immediately. This was a good part because it's like not expecting this at all. She flashes the dagger at him and nearly misses him. And then Matt gets her on her back, and he pulls out his Shadar Logoth poison dagger. He's like, "Mine is scarier," because there's like mist coming out of the spot where she stabs the wooden post. So it's like this super creepy dagger that she almost killed him with. And basically, you find out she's another dark friend. So this solidified it for me, John.
She was scared to death of that Shadar Logoth dagger.
She was, yes.
Well, there's something to that. There's got to be.
You're right. It's again that evil that is not controlled by the Dark One. Shadar Logoth is just cool. It's just this separate ancient evil in the world. How could she notice what it was? Who knows? Maybe she's touched by the Dark One and she has supernatural powers, whatever. But she basically is another dark friend, and that's why I wanted to mention the fact that we've had 3 dark friends now, I should say, and there's a bunch of them around, and so the world is not safe. These kids are not paranoid. They were totally right, and it's now just a very bad place to be. They literally are not going to find any help anywhere. And she was just she looked like the perfect town girl, like straight A's, valedictorian, whatever. And it's like, if she can serve the Dark One, we can't trust anybody. But their saving grace was the fact that Matt did have this evil dagger, and she was scared of it. So they left her behind, locked up, and they tossed her smoking knife away. But they got away. But I forgot to mention that I love the way this chapter was actually written. At the beginning of the chapter was when Rand was in the back of a horse cart, and Master Kitch, I think his name was, he was just a farmer. And when they left his wagon, this is at the beginning of the chapter, mind you, they left his wagon, and he was hesitant, but he said, "You boys look like you're in trouble. I live a few farms down right here. So if you need my help, you've got it." And that was a rare offer. Most people would just give them scarves or help them a little bit, but this was a very dangerous time for many people with dragon fangs being written on doors and with dark friends everywhere. But I love the way it was written, John, because Matt exploded on him because the farmer mentioned you never know who's a dark friend. And Matt exploded on him. So without everything we just talked about, you didn't know when this scene happened. Matt was like, "What do you know a dark friend looks like?" And you're like, "Matt's lost it. Good grief."
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
But Robert Jordan wrote this to where you find out later they went through this whole experience of the dark friends at their back every second. And then he closes the chapter with them coming back, kind of, it's a time loop. It goes back around to where they actually meet Master Kitch at the end of the chapter and hitch the ride with him. And you're like, wow, these guys, it was a beautifully written chapter. I don't know the literary mechanism you call it when you do that whole sequencing, but I was like, yeah, I probably would have exploded too. So
I don't actually know either what to call that, but I loved that just a little bit of variety he threw in there. Yeah, it kind of mixed up the book a little bit, and it kind of, it's just the kind of thing that keeps that reader engaged, because you got to keep reading. What did I miss something, or and then it all comes together at the end of the chapter. It was brilliant. I loved it. Just great writer. Robert Jordan is, at this point in my mind, can do no wrong.
He can do no wrong.
He's been a great writer, and I noticed a lot of these farmers, Josh, a lot of them didn't know anything, nor did they care to. I mean, how many times? About the 5th time I heard a farmer say that. "I don't know nothing, and I don't care to. I just." I just kept laughing. This was the only farmer that cared to know something. And
It might.
to.
You talked about, we didn't hit on the social commentary. There is some social commentary. You can read into some things, but it's a worldview, right? It's a worldview of ignorance is bliss, and if it's out of their control, and they have to look after their own, they don't want trouble. It goes to show you a society that can be repressed, and a society that can sit here and turn its eye away from evil. We talk about the white cloaks, which are like Nazis. And now I'm not going to sit here and start with a lot of social commentary, but make those two connections. With these farmers and these people in this kingdom turn a blind eye and just let a few soldiers try to handle it, and society eventually goes down that path of letting the white cloaks, the Nazis, take over. That's a very harsh, criticism or commentary of, how does it happen in a society, right? And so anyway, there's your big social commentary for the podcast.
You're right for bringing it up, because we'll hear about white cloaks here shortly. But in my mind, I'm asking myself the whole time, why does the queen allow these white cloaks to get away with abusing her people the way they do? But there's some political something at play. Yeah. But they are allowed to get away with taking people that they decide are dark friends and abusing them, torturing, and eventually killing. And it's just straight up murder. And I don't understand the politics of why they're allowed to do it. Maybe it'll come around later. Jordan's been very thorough so far. Even things where I've kind of said, and then later on I go, oh. So we'll see how that comes about. But you have to make that social commentary.
They are a powerful faction. You're right. Really good point. I'm curious about what the strength of her army is, what the strength of her reign is, because she's allied with the Aes Sedai. There's division within Camelin, which we finally get to Camelin. Let's actually run through that journey real quick, because we do have to get to back to Perrin, Egwene, and Eve, Moraine, and Lan, the warrior, and then the big finale, and then who they meet in Camelin. Lots to cover. I mean, it's really rich and great stuff. But the cool thing is they meet another great farmer. They find a fade, and this is a crazy scene. You have a farmer who sees a really shady innkeeper talking to a fade, and they disappear. And the innkeeper tells the farmer, hey, there's a reward for these guys. And then he's like, okay, whatever. And then Matt and Rand take a huge gambit. It's that night. They are like, there's a fade right there. And they approach the farmer who's going to Camelin. And we find out, again, great writing from Robert Jordan, the farmer says, yeah, I'm going to Camelin. Hitch a ride. It's late at night. It's kind of like he is one of these rare guys who's not annoyed by the foreigners. And there's other great writing with all the foreigners going to Camelin, a road packed full of them. How you have merchant carts who whip their whips at these guys just out of malice.
That was brutal.
It was brutal because they whipped the whips at Rand and all these other people. Like, they don't even stop for them on the roads. So there's this whole, again, the world is real. It's like this is what they experienced. But they get the ride. They hitch the ride with this farmer. He's a cool dude. Late at night, and he tells them, he reveals some history of the kingdom. So it's really cool listening to tidbits of like how the queen's son, and that there's a widow. The queen is the true queen.
She's a widow queen, yeah.
Yeah, and her kids. I won't get on that because we want to get to the central characters. We'll learn more about her down the road. But basically, they get to Camelin. This city dwarfs anything they've seen in their life. This thing is loud. The farmer reveals on his departure just a nice little thing about how he's like, hide your sword to get rid of it. And they're freaking out because he knows that they're the ones the fade was looking for. But he said, I didn't want the reward. All right, I just want you guys to look after yourself. So it's just it's again social commentary as far as there are good people in this world. And so he leaves them.
Yeah, Josh, hold on one sec. I don't know nothing. Nor do I want to. Okay, that's all.
He does have to add that in there.
Okay.
But this city is huge, and so we'll just call it huge, and we'll move on. So they're there. They finally made it. And Matt, again, ready to give up. We don't need to keep on going to the fact that he's in a bad place.
This was the worst part of him just wanting to give up. I mean, he literally just throws in the towel. This is where he actually throws in the towel. I was so angry at him. Okay.
They're dead, Jim. They're dead, Rand.
Yeah.
Shut up. So we find them in a quote unquote safe place. But they're there. We go back to NynaEve, and she's playing stable boy to Lan and Moraine. She's still bitter at not having a big role, but it's cool because they have sought out Perrin. So it's really cool. I'm looking at the maps in this world. I'm happy that they find him. I'm not necessarily sure how they found him. But they tracked him down. I'm trying to see her geographic.
It was that coin. It was that silver coin. They just knew. It was like a homing beacon.
Yeah, it was a silver coin. You're right. I just wanted to find out. Hey, can someone, like they're doing interactive tutorials for Game of Thrones now? I'm like, can someone do an interactive tutorial for this one? Because I'm just totally geeking out. I think that's going to be a hit. People will adapt that for different big epic series. So, Moraine and Lan, I love it because NynaEve, again, the character growth, we get it for everyone, and I love how that's what drives the book as well. These characters matter, and there's little small things that are dropped. So what I'm referring to here now is NynaEve has a crush on Lan. So for all the ladies out there, she he grabs her hand and she's like, oh, he's strong.
Yeah.
and all this stuff.
And then he says, if you're as good at tracking as I think you are, and then her eyes went, she was just all falling for Lan. And Lan's probably doing the same thing inside. He just has to keep that demeanor. He just grunts. That's how he expresses his Twitter. His Twitter, Twitter patient. That's the word I'm looking for.
Twitter patient.
Right.
All the ladies hope, John. All the ladies hope. That's what Lan is. He's reciprocating in his own stone-faced way. But it's really cool because all those little things get put in there. And Moraine does tell the two that, hey, we found Perrin and Egwene, but there's a whole army of men, so you need to play a role. You got to cut the horse lines. You're like, holy cow, they're trusting me with this job. NynaEve is like, I got this big job, and so they basically, this happens quickly, but Moraine and Lan, they're not all powerful, so they have to be they have to plan this out well, or otherwise things go bad. We know what bad dudes the White Cloaks are. So you cut. Well, actually, you don't cut to Perrin and Egwene. You have NynaEve go down, and she's trying to sleuth through the camp, and her heart is pounding out of her chest. But she does cut the rope lines. She actually finds Bella, and then the actual thunderstorm, the lightning storm from the Aes Sedai comes raining down on her, and things go into madness. So it happens. She does her Aes Sedai power, but then you cut to Perrin and Egwene a few moments before that, when you have Child Buyer, this super mean, super twisted White Cloak that kicks them.
Emotionless.
He is not filled with emotion. He's just this calculating, cold epitome of the evilness of the White Cloaks. And this is interesting. You see that they've been dragged along behind horses, and that they're just in really bad physical shape. So it's really good, again, to put yourself in the character's shoes. This whole ability for Jordan to keep putting yourself in the character's shoes is pretty amazing. And so Child Buyer says here, we can't make it to Camelon at the appointed time. He's basically conspiring with them in his little speech, and this is totally out of character for him, which puts Perrin on guard immediately. But there's this rock, and basically, Child Buyer. I'm whispering here like Child Buyer's whispering, but the White Cloak tells them we can't reach Camelon by the appointed time, and we can't sit here and have you slow us down anymore. So here's a solution: we let you go. Or he said, if some sharp rock,
escape, yeah.
If the sharp rock happens to be here, plop, sharp rock. But John, did you find it interesting that Perrin right away picked up on, wait a minute, there's a third alternative, dude, you're not telling me about?
Exactly. His spidey senses were going off. And the guy standing there going, yeah, your ropes might just be frayed and you might get away. I'm just going to stand here with this sword drawn and watch you do all that. Everything will be fine, guys.
I don't hate you. You're not worse than, a rabid dog, and dark friends aren't that bad. So it was pretty hilarious how Perrin was like, holy cow, he's going to kill us. So I was like,
yeah,
wow.
that was Perrin's. Oh, wait a minute.
It was pretty awesome though, because he he saved himself. It showed that he does rate on a higher order scale than Matt, and kind of he can make it out in the real world on his own without falling apart.
Oh,
He
Josh,
has
look,
it much worse than Matt.
Perrin is great. NynaEve is great. I was telling you yesterday, NynaEve is like the group's medic. Everyone loves the medic. I mean, she might whine a lot, but she's really good at what she does. And then there's Matt. Matt, his name is spelled with one T, Josh. One T. Why? Matt. Thank you, Matt. He's just that guy in the story.
So let me throw it. Why not? Okay, I'll really quick throw in the fact that I think. No, that's too epic. We might say that if we have time at the end. I've teased it, but I'm going to hold back on my theory for Matt. Everybody, we will hear the theory on that, and I'll put my money where my mouth is, and hopefully I'm right. But then the lightning flashes start. Back to narrative. The lightning flashes. So we don't have a chance to see how this whole thing plays out with Child Buyer, Evil White Cloak Man, and Perrin and Egwene. The lightning flashes, and everything. This is where the two timelines come into sync. And basically Lan comes out of nowhere, and I love it, because here comes a Child Buyer evil dude who has big axe and who seriously will kill you if you threaten his way of life and any of his beliefs. But Lan comes in and takes down the other white cloaks right around them, and then you think that he's going to be in trouble. This is going to be a fight, but he casually just leans over as this lightning quick viper strike from Child Buyer misses him. Like, holy cow. So Lan's just super quick, and he pummels Child Buyer in this, and it's a great quick scene where he just lays him flat on his back, and Perrin's like, "Did that really just happen?" So they take him. They get out of the camp. They put two white cloaks on. The whole camp's in disarray, and they actually escape. So it's really cool. It's this great scene, and they're out of danger. They just go into the woods. It's really simple. I can see this mass chaos. Probably a great cinematic scene. But then NynaEve is lost, and because she's not back, that she didn't rendezvous, and so you get worried for half a second. NynaEve arrives, and then they go off, and they get to a safe spot, and obviously Perrin, like a good friend, is asking Moraine and Madar, and Moraine can't tell him where she is. But Lan and Perrin have an interesting conversation around the campfire. Lan actually, he actually talks more than he normally talks, and he says, if the Dark One is out in the world, or if he's manipulating events faster than we know of, then we may all be lost. And so it's kind of a good finale. I don't know if you have any comments, but we have to.
Well, we do, yeah, I know. We have to move right along, but this is where Moraine and Lan find out that Perrin's able to speak with wolves. This is some kind of development. And Moraine's a little shocked by it, but then we find out that Lan actually knew Elias, the wolf master, as I call him, and Elias apparently taught Lan some things way back in the day, and yes. Lan was happy to hear that he was alive. So Elias may come into play later on, but apparently, how I discussed that this happened so suddenly to Perrin, I was a little irritated by it that we should have. But basically, Lan wanted to know, did this happen to you suddenly? So it's actually addressed. Did this happen to you suddenly, or did you meet someone? Was there a go-between? That intrigued me a lot. I want to know more about this go-between and what Elias actually did to be a go-between. Because as far as I'm concerned, he just took them in and he talked with them and fed them. I'm not sure what he did that was a real go-between to develop that skill. But you also see here how badly Perrin had been abused by the Children of the Light. When NynaEve, our medic, comes over to give aid to him, and there's bruises on top of bruises. And Josh, and it may just be my mindset towards these crazy extremist people that love to kill when you don't agree with them. But they, honestly, the Children of the Light in this story feel more evil to me than the actual evil in the story. I don't know if that makes sense, but the evil in the story want to take Rand, and they want to do evil things, but they want to take him and use him for their own purposes. The Children of the Light want to physically hurt, abuse, torture, cut you open, and kill. And I don't get that same sense from these Dark Ones. The Dark Ones may want to stab and kill, right? Or they may want to catch and drag you back to the Dark One. But I don't get that same sense of just pure, just love of hurting.
There's different kinds of evil in the world.
It really feels terrible.
Yeah, with different kinds of evil that exist, and what's the source of that evil? It just shows you the complexity. It's not good versus one evil, right? So that's what I the way you characterize it, it makes sense, and it's lovely layers of complexity in a fully realized world. That's all I can say. There could be a lot to say. There's what's wrong with these white cloaks? They're hurting mankind by sitting here and kind of whittling away what they think again should be the perfect kind of humanity. I mean, going back to that whole Nazi theme there. So anyway. You're right. You're right. It's kind of disconcerting that maybe with the splinters in humanity, that could eventually bring their downfall because they can't unite, maybe not uniting against the Dark One. So we have everybody safe, right? We get back to Camelin, and
yeah,
Camelin,
and Kyle Byer took it in the face. And that made me happy as well.
Goodbye, Byer. He won't be hurting anybody anytime soon, but he's still alive. We do find out. And back in Camelon, we find our heroes at the Queen's Blessing. They actually do make it to the Queen's Blessing, and they find Master Gill, who's the innkeeper. Because they mentioned Tom Maryland, we find out Tom Maryland had a huge backstory. So it's lucky for them that they have this one person who's willing to take them in because they don't have any money. There's thousands of people, foreigners, coming into Camelon. So if you set the context, these guys are just lost in this mass of a city on edge with lots of foreigners in it. But Tom did him a solid, but they got him to where they need to be. But basically, we meet someone at this inn, and I love it because this is a cool new character. And the introduction is funny because Matt is sulking in the attic, but Rand goes to the library in the inn, and he turns around to see this 10-foot monster that's the spitting image of a Trolloc, and he literally flips out. And this guy is like, I wish people would stop reacting like that. it was kind of a comical moment because this guy's nicely dressed and he can actually talk instead of So it was cool because what is he? He's not a Trolloc, and there's probably a connection, but he's an Ogier. Am I pronouncing that right?
It's that or it's Ogier. I'm not sure which one.
Ogier. But yeah, I was about to sing, but you don't want me to sing. Ogier.
No, yes, we do. Yeah.
But it's cool because we learn about the inner city of Camelon. It is called the inner city. There's the new city and the inner city. And other places of the world, which I would suspect White Bridge will be one of them, were made by the Ogiers. And they lived on the steadings. They don't go into the outer world. This is a 99-year-old Ogier who's actually a youngling in his world. So I loved it, the fact that they are this race that has longevity, and they talk about the humans who are so frantic and who live so recklessly because they have such short lifespans. And so there's a funny dialogue between these two. But what I took away from it was that this Ogier wanted to explore the world, a world that had changed so very differently. And the thread of the conversation came to where Rand admitted everything to who he was. Rand, he had to tell somebody, right? It's like a counselor moment. Nice little quiet library. Why not spill my whole life? Who cares how dangerous it is? So anyway, it was cool because we find out that the Ogier wanted to follow Rand and say, hey, you're going to be pretty important. I would like to follow you. And Rand, funny enough, it was interesting. He said no. But again, that's a real-world reaction. He's worried that, you know what, you're not inconspicuous, buddy. You're 10 feet tall, and I don't want a fade coming down on me, so no, you can't come with us on our adventures. That was kind of sad.
But frankly, in Ogier could probably be a big help. Hey, I had to make one comment real quick. I know we're in a hurry here, but I found it interesting that they were actually like these master builders because they built most of these great cities with this beautiful stone that was smooth on the outside, but the real thing that they were concerned with were their groves, and what they actually the true art of building was in the trees that they planted in these groves, and they hand selected these trees that were gonna prosper there on that land and improve the land, and the groves were no longer tended, and that was kind of a lost thing. So I don't know if that'll come back later on, maybe even in the next book in the series, but that's really what they were concerned with.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing how in that one conversation you learned about their way of life. Pretty awesome. But now we get to it. We get to the finale. The finale of this section, I should say. Rand, basically, the dragon reborn, his name is Logain. He comes to Camelin, and we find out the reason this is because this is kind of like light triumphing over the shadow, and basically everyone in the city wants to come see this guy. So this is kind of a public display of like we defeated Logain. And Rand, it shows how he actually wants to, he finds out in this city that the Queen's men and people who support the Queen, again politics here, there's not a lot of them. They think she's to blame for the long winter and for all the dark friends and all these rumors of bad things coming. And so if you wear red, you're a Queen supporter. If you wear white, you're against the Queen. But on this day when the Dragon Reborn comes, everyone's coming together to see this. So there's not a lot of animosity, but it's still a dangerous city to be in if you're a supporter of the Queen. So that's really interesting. And Rand, coincidentally, he wrapped his heron-marked sword in a red banner when he got there. So he became a Queen supporter.
Yeah, he bought that by accident.
He did, and that was pretty interesting how that played into this. He had a good spot on the street. He was going to see Logain up close. This was like a once-in-a-lifetime moment. A lot of people said that. That's why everybody's here, once-in-a-lifetime moment, to see the Queen and this Dragon Reborn who can actually channel the one power, which makes him dangerous. But there's this very mysterious random character, this beggar, who has been seeking these kids since White Ridge. While Rand's waiting in the parade line, got his front row seat, here comes the beggar. Holy cow. So that just moves the narrative forward to where he runs away, he gets away, so we don't find out what happens there. But
didn't you keep thinking we were going to recognize that beggar? I kept thinking this was going to be that peddler that came through at the very beginning of the book again, but that didn't come full circle. Yeah. So I was kind of surprised.
Me too. And what's even more surprising is where Rand ends up. He climbs up a wall, which has an interesting view that's far away, and he sees Logain from a distance. And it's interesting because, again, from a narrative standpoint, he was up close, now he's far away, and he realizes he probably doesn't want to be any closer because this guy does not look defeated. He comes to the procession of the Camelin warriors and the Camelin knights, and he's caged with Aes Sedai, like having an invisible force field around him, making sure he doesn't channel the one power. And he's sitting there looking, like he's a king in a cage, and he's staring everybody down, and he's like, I don't think I want to be any closer. So that's really interesting, that this guy might still be pivotal in the book. But then Rand falls off the wall, and he falls into a garden. And because this voice in a tree, makes him fall, basically.
Little girl's voice, yeah.
He's like, who? What? And we find out, this is not a big leap, but where did Rand end up? He actually ended up in the Queen's garden. I didn't know how to say it other than just saying it. And who did he meet other than the Queen's daughter and the Queen's son? Elaine and Gawain. And you're like, holy cow. And so more characters. This book is going to, bust out the seams with characters, but it's really good because she's a healer. He cracked his head good. So her whole introduction is getting bloody and messy, sewing up or bandaging this big head wound of Rand. And
he was like her pet bird with a broken wing, and she had to mend him.
He was a stray, and it was really cool. Just that whole introduction, I gotta say, it was all believable. But at the end of it, the stepbrother comes up, and he's like, you know what? Get rid of this guy. Step away from my brother and sister. And so we get an introduction to the royal family. And I know we're rushing through this, but we get an introduction to the whole royal family in a minute. Because the stepbrother goes and gets, we'll just call him stepbrother for now, but Gawain and Elaine are sitting there with Rand when the knights, all these ninja red warriors, the Queen's Guard comes, and they're about to lock up Rand. And Elaine is adamant about protecting him. So that's why we actually get to go to where we go, is because she's like, he is my guest. You will not define me. So it's a tough position because she met Rand, and this is just really weird that she's protecting him. Don't know why, to the degree she is, but that gets them to where the Queen knows that there's an intruder in the garden, so she's wary about what this is all about. They get to go see the Queen, John. My favorite part of the book, almost so far, because we see the world just open up in spades.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, between the Queen and her Aes Sedai, which I can't remember the Aes Sedai's name right now.
Elida or Elida or something.
Elida, that's what it was. It
Yeah,
was Elida.
So we get into the royal court, and you see that Elaine, the daughter, and Gawain, the son of Queen Morgase, are really nervous because with the characterization of Elaine as this confident woman, but her mother is 100 times more confident. And so Rand, from the newcomer's perspective, is taken in the whole throne room, where it's a tiny throne room. There's even a small joke about, oh, Mother, oh, this is one of the small rooms. Mother's never ordered a beheading from this room. So you're just like, you're getting all this build-up, and it's hilarious, and I love it. And everyone bows and waits for the Queen to tell them to rise, and Rand is taking in this whole room. And it's a really great scene. It's reminiscent, maybe I'm not as a huge fanboy as I think I am, because I don't know what a lot of throne room scenes are like, but Game of Thrones really set the precedent for me. But this scene where Morgase takes charge, cuts her daughter off, and starts talking about why she left a room. You are endangering yourself. Things could happen to you because, you know, Logain is here. He could do something to you. There's these insinuations of how powerful the guy is. Then she turns her attention to Rand, and she's like, "Who is this stranger? Who is he?" And the whole conversation, you have Elida knitting away behind the Queen, the all-powerful Aes Sedai, minding her own business, immediately takes interest in Rand once he comes to the forefront. And so she walks up to him, and she says, "You're not from the Two Rivers," and she eyes him up and down, and he's like petrified of her. And this is important. She grabs his heron sword, and the scene gets really good here because she says, "You have a heron sword. You're too young," and everybody freezes.
Yeah, those guards got pretty tense. Swords started coming out. They're stepping in front of people, all because he had a heron-marked blade that he wasn't touching.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
I loved it because the guards were like prepared to die, and Rand was like, "Holy cow! I don't even know how to use this thing."
Well, that's not true. I learned like 2 moves, and they're good for killing Trollocs. Thank you, Lan.
Swing left, swing right. So it was cool because here's where the politics came in. The Heron-marked sword, everybody was protecting their loved ones. You know, the Queen's advisor protecting her. Everybody was protecting everybody, just petrified, except for Elida, the Aes Sedai. And she says, I can't remember how it comes about. The Queen says, "What do we do with this boy?" And basically, I love it how she says, "You know what? There'll be blood and tears, and the kingdom will weep." So you're like, holy cow, she just made a big prediction. She said thousands will mourn or thousands will weep. But the advisor to the Queen was like, well, I'm not going to behead the kid because he said he would. Unless she has a closer prediction to why he's important, I'm not going to sit here and behead him. So this is another commentary, John, on rule of law, on society. Do we just sit here and throw away kids because we think they're guilty? We're living in the days of the NSA and spying on us and what we do, but this was an interesting thing back then about who keeps the rule of law. But before we get to that, about the judgment on Rand, the Aes Sedai actually whispers in his ear. She did tell everyone, the kingdom will weep, but in his ear where no one can hear him, or right at his face, she said, and you will be at the center of this.
Yep.
You will cause the world to weep. It's like, holy cow. He's the dragon reborn. You know this, right?
Well, maybe. We actually don't know that yet, right? Maybe it's Perrin. I don't know. Maybe it's Matt. Oh, my gosh, don't be mad. However, you're probably right because even when he was talking with the Ogier, he explained to him, he said, you know what, you are Tarvaran. And basically that the part of the world will shape itself around Rand. He said Arthur Hawkwing and Lews Theron Telamon were both Tarvaran, and it sounds like Rand is going to be among those legendary people. So
pretty awesome, and that's where it gets epic, and the book is getting so incredibly good. And the judgment that finally comes down on Rand is where the Queen says, I will not throw away my lowest subject. If I am the last person to bring justice to the kingdom, so be it. And she lets him go, and you're like, this is insane, but this is so good. I can believe it. These new characters and this new politics and just everything that Rand has put himself in the center of, which he was like totally not supposed to go noticed. He has brought himself to the center of this kingdom and what's happening here. Incredible. Simply incredible. Super excited, John. I don't know if you have any parting comments, but that's where we left off, and we are going to conclude next week this epic tale, the first part anyway of the book one. We'll see where Robert Jordan leaves us. But I don't know if you want to say anything else about.
Yeah, I've got one closing thought that I think we should look forward to towards the end of the book, or it may not come out till later in the series. But what exactly is? Okay, we got light versus dark. We've got the light, which seems to be this just a neutral power that can be drawn by good people, I guess. And then you have the dark one. I'm not really sure what his power is or what he's drawing it from. That hasn't been explained yet. But there is a physical manifestation of the dark one and that dark power. We don't really have a physical manifestation for the light power. So is the dragon reborn going to be the physical manifestation for the side of good, or is it not going to be that way? Because the dark one was bound by the creator according to the lore, okay? Well, a dragon reborn is not on the same level as a creator. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to figure out, is there going to be a physical manifestation on the good side like there is on the dark side? So I'm looking forward to that in the book, trying to I'm hoping to see that fleshed out.
Really good point, man. The Dark One did his counterstrike that destroyed the Lord of the Morning at the very beginning of this book. His counterstrike, destroyed him, and that's what broke the world when he went crazy, because he was the kinslayer. After he killed his kin, he just he broke the world. So you're right. That's going to be really interesting to see what can actually beat the Dark One. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thanks for joining us, John. Thank you, everybody. We look forward to the end of the Eye of the World, find out what it is, find out if Rand is the one, Perrin is the one, and if Matt is the one. Thanks. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Reign of Books. Check us out, reignofbooks.com.
Take it easy.
Dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun.